I'm very happy to be here. This is the 20th time that this parish has celebrated its patronal feast of St. Francis of Assisi, having been the parish inaugurated November 15th, 20 years ago. Very interesting that it also marks an anniversary for me. 1 year ago, I arrived here approximately on October 4th. I was packing my suitcases in Saudi Arabia, waiting for the first flight to come to the Emirates to come to this parish. It had been delayed a few days, and I got on the plane on October 5th. And then I was here for my first morning Mass on October 6th. Father Reinhold was here, Father Matthew, Father Bijou. I was here, some of the staff were sitting on the benches, and the church was empty. It's not empty anymore. And so we're called to renew and rebuild our church once again, constantly. And now we've just received our newest Capuchin, Franciscan, Father Anthony, to help us to do that as we continue to renew our faith and our church life. As the cross of San Damiano spoke to St. Francis and said, "Renew my church. My church is in ruins, renew my church." And so we're very happy to have St. Francis of Assisi as our patron. Some say he was like a second Christ. More books have been written about St. Francis of Assisi than any other person in the history of the world. And many new books are published every year about his life because people continue to be inspired by him. I certainly am, as a member of the Capuchin Franciscan Order, a follower of St. Francis of Assisi. But many of you are also followers of St. Francis, Franciscans in your own way. And also, 1 year ago in Assisi, on October 3rd, Pope Francis issued his encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, all brothers and sisters, in Assisi, because St. Francis considered all to be brothers and sisters. He wanted to be the little brother of everyone, Order of Friar Minors, the bunch of little brothers. That's who we are. We try to be brothers and sisters to everyone. So St. Francis lived in poverty without anything because he did not want anything to divide himself from God and from others. If you have things, then you fear losing them, and that can be a barrier in your relationship, in your fraternal brotherhood, sisterhood with other people. And now more than ever, we need to recognize that the whole world is one family. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it shows how interconnected we are with one another, that we all have responsibility to all of humanity. We need to think of all people as our brothers and sisters. St. Francis also called the creatures of God his brothers and sisters. The water, brother fire, Mother Earth, all creatures of creation are our brothers and sisters. We are all relatives. We have to care for one another, live in harmony and peace, and lift one another up when we fall down, restore and renew one another to good health. Fratelli Tutti, all brothers and sisters. St. Francis, as we know, was conformed to the image of Christ, especially revealed to him, the first person in the history of the church that we know of to receive the stigmata, the 5 wounds of the crucified Christ. Later on, the Capuchin Franciscan, Padre Pio, just in the last century, was the first priest to receive the stigmata. St. Francis of Assisi was always a brother, never a priest, but yet the founder of the Franciscans. But 20 years earlier, the crucified Christ spoke to him when he was still trying to figure out what to do with his life and how to follow Jesus. He knew he wanted to follow Jesus, but was wondering exactly how. And so he went to the San Damiano church. And before what we now call the crucifix of San Damiano, he prayed. And it's a crucifix of the crucified and risen Lord. Jesus with the wounds bleeding, but yet his eyes open. Jesus of the Gospel of John, who upon his death went immediately into his glory. And so he's praying before that cross. And he hears Jesus speak to him. My church is in ruins. Repair my church. We too have to embrace the crucified Christ. And he speaks to us. Gives us guidance. Gives us healing. Gives us pardon. Gives us direction. Gives us insight. Gives us his Spirit. When I was many years ago, some 30 years ago, something wasn't right with my life, and I spent this time between Christmas and New Year's where the whole parish was shut down, the office was closed, all the staff were given vacation where I was, and I was able to spend that week in prayer. We had a San Damiano cross in the chapel of our friary where the Capuchin friars lived, and I spent many hours that week praying. And suddenly, I was given an insight by the Lord. As I prayed the words of St. Francis. If you allow me, I'll repeat the words that St. Francis prayed the San Damiano cross, and I'll sing it for you if you allow me to do that. O most high and glorious God, enlighten the darkness of my heart. Grant me right faith, certain hope, and perfect charity. Grant me wisdom and insight, that I might always discern your most holy and true will. So as I prayed, I was given an insight that I realized that way deep down inside of myself, I was angry with the world. Wasn't exactly sure why, but probably had to do with a feeling from my childhood that life wasn't fair to me, that I wasn't treated fairly in my family. Anyway, I went to one of the other Capuchin priests, and he anointed my head with oil, and I felt the burden lifted. I was more free, more joyful, more like St. Francis. The crucified Christ, bigger than all our problems, bigger than all our wounds, bigger than all our divisions, wants us to be free, and to be joyful, and to have new life to serve him. Spirit of St. Francis, become more and more like Christ. And so as we receive communion today, let us say yes to Jesus. I want to be conformed to you, crucified and risen. I want to be conformed to your life. Teach me, Lord, how to do that. Heal me, Lord, so that I can be more like you. So we are grateful for the life and example of St. Francis of Assisi, which encourages us and animates us to follow Christ more deeply.